What's up, everyone? How's it going? I've missed you like crazy. And today, I've got a story for you that's not just any story. This one's gonna make your brain do a triple flip and question everything you thought you knew about history. We're talking about something super weird, super controversial, and tied to a global conspiracy that wants to wipe out the history of an incredible civilization, the Muslim civilization of Tartaria. Get your popcorn ready, settle in, and let's uncover the secrets the New World Order has hidden from us.
Ever heard of star forts? You know, those strange star-shaped geometric structures you see in old photos of ancient places? Sources claim there are over 319 documented star forts listed on starfort.com. And they say the first of these forts were built in the early 16th century, right around the time the Romanovs began conquering vast regions of Tartaria. Official historians will tell you that star forts, or bastion forts, were built to maximize defensive capabilities against cannon fire, providing better protection and clear battlefield views for soldiers inside. Sounds logical, right? But just hold on a minute. Here's where it gets wild. There's a strong belief that the Tartarians themselves built these star forts and star cities, but not for war. No, sir. These were vibrational frequency ecosystems designed to create a sense of joy and harmony within society. Imagine that, self-sustaining star cities, their buildings constructed with sacred geometric patterns that metaphysically or symbolically represented the cosmos. You could call them micro-universes on Earth. To really grasp this, we need to understand what made these star cities tick. There are 5 key elements that lead us to discover the amazing Tartarian civilization. Remains of a large lake. This was the foundation of their whole system. Long canals. Think like the canals in Venice, Italy. Unusual stone bridges, like London Bridge, designed to allow large ships to pass. Stone streets, just like what you see in Italy, Spain, and Switzerland. Baths, similar to the Turkish and Hungarian baths still around today. All these features were part of an infrastructure that used water to produce a magnetic frequency. This frequency was absorbed by the buildings designed and then re-emitted into the environment as breathable air. These frequencies and vibrations created an energy of joy and harmony. It was like living in an oasis of positive energy. And get this, most of these structures are in Europe, but there's also evidence that Shanghai, China was originally a star city. So this isn't just an old European thing. What does this all mean for us? These vibrations affect the magnetic fields they reach, including the fields around our bodies. Cymatics shows us the geometric shapes that magnetic fields take when exposed to vibrations. So our bodies are affected by all of this. Now, sources will tell us that these star forts weren't built to protect against invading armies because their shape wasn't perfectly defensive. Attackers could actually position themselves next to the angled walls without being seen by those inside. So, what's the real story, and why do historians tell us they were defensive forts? That's our first clue to the conspiracy. The text also mentions that over 91 star forts in the US alone were built in the 1850s. Can you imagine? Fort Jefferson in the Florida Keys is the largest brick masonry structure in the Americas, made of over 16 million bricks. Why go to all that effort if they were just ordinary forts? Here's a list of some star forts in the US. Fort Wood, Fort Washington, Fort Frederick, Fort Pickens, Fort Mauchin, Fort Mifflin, Fort Pike, Fort Zachary Taylor, Fort Norfolk, Fort Adams, Fort Griswold, Fort Montgomery, Fort William Henry, Fort Jackson, Fort Moultrie, Fort Clinch, Fort Pulaski, Fort Schuyler, Fort King George, Fort Point, Fort James Jackson, Fort Duquesne, Fort Monroe, Fort Ontario, Fort Stanwix, Fort Jefferson, Castillo de San Marcos, Fort McHenry, Fort Union, Fort Independence, Fort Morden, Fort Crown Point, Fort Caroline, Fort Niagara, Fort Jay, Fort Negley, Fort Ticonderoga, Fort Trumbull, Fort Wayne, Fort Delaware, Fort Ligonier, Fort Knox, Fort Warren, Fort Constitution, Fort Roberdeau, Fort Curtis, Fort Massac, Fort McClary, Fort Gaines, Fort Anahuac, Fort Massachusetts, and Fort Stevens. Look, man, Fort McHenry in Baltimore, Maryland, built in 1798 after the War of 1812, is famous for inspiring the Star-Spangled Banner by Francis Scott Key, and the 11-pointed star-shaped base that the Statue of Liberty sits on at Fort Pike, New Orleans, Louisiana, is called a hendegram and represents a later. Symbols and secrets are everywhere. And here's some star forts around the world: Fort Bertange in Netherlands, Palma Nova in Italy, Citadel Hill in Halifax, Canada, Rothenburg Fortress in Bavaria, Germany, Elvas in Portugal, Kronborg Castle in Helsinki, Denmark, Fort Brescu in France, Tilbury Star Fort in Essex, England. And the text says these buildings had many different names: Old Roman, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, Neoclassical, and so on. But the one common thread is that buildings aren't built like that anymore. And they tell us it's because of cost effectiveness. Really? Or is there another secret? And we rarely think about the incredible architectural work that went into designing these ancient buildings. There were no CAD programs back then, just a drawing board, pencil, and eraser. That's mind-blowing architectural genius.
Imagine this. The Berlin Zoo, home to the largest collection of animal and plant species from around the world. It houses 1,380 species, 20,200 animals, and an aquarium, all surrounded by 35 hectares of plant life. This zoo is inside Tiergarten Park, across from the Reichstag Dome, with the Victory Column, made of granite inlaid with bronze ornaments, right in its center. These large vaults, towers, and columns are always linked to the production of etheric energy. It's highly probable that the Tartarian civilization dedicated Tiergarten Park in Berlin to saving near-extinct species in a world slowly emerging from global chaos and sudden climate change. Tiergarten might have served as a great Noah's Ark, equipped with etheric energy, where all species were classified for preservation. Wikipedia claims the German zoo opened in 1844, but at that date, Germany didn't even exist. It didn't have a central government. There was only a confederation of 22 small monarchies and 17 other German-speaking states. So Tiergarten Park and its palace belonged to the Tartarian civilization. After Tartaria was defeated and Germany was established, the palace was demolished and the Reichstag was built by the will of Bismarck. Folks, this is clear historical revisionism. At the Berlin Zoo, visitors and animals also benefit from the magical sound of bells. The park has a rare carillon installed at a height of 42 meters with 68 bells weighing 48 tons. It's the fourth largest in the world by number of bells. Concerts featuring this historic carillon are held every Sunday at 3 p.m. from May to September. The vibration of bronze connected to the etheric electromagnetic current has a high power in harmony and healing. There's plenty of evidence suggesting that the architects of these cathedrals possessed knowledge of cymatics and perhaps the healing power of sound long before modern scientists did. Choirs, pipe organs, and the architecture itself might have literally healed churchgoers for centuries. The term cymatics was coined by Hans Jenny in the 1970s to describe how sound is visualized. Until recently, the only way to see sound was by using a violin bow and rubbing it on a metal plate covered with sand. The sand, or salt, moves on the plate, eventually settling into a pattern that represents a resonant frequency. Ms. Tanya Harris visited various churches across Europe and recorded the silence of each church for about 7 minutes, then replayed the recordings while recording the sound again to get an amplified recording. When she had an audible sample, she created her own cymatics device and played the sound through light and water to observe the patterns created by each church's frequency.
The results were astounding, with the patterns resembling the classic stained glass rose windows commonly found in cathedrals. Scientific research confirms the healing power of sound frequencies. Professor Sung-Chal Ji of Rutgers University conducted an experiment concluding that red blood cells exposed to classical music had a significantly improved lifespan compared to blood cells that remained in silence. And since our bodies are made of fluid, the beautiful patterns produced by the resonance of music and sound create healing patterns within us. So the Tartarians knew all this and used it in their daily lives. And the New World Order destroyed all of that. Sacred geometry involves sacred cosmic patterns used in the design of everything in our reality, often seen in architecture, art, and nature. The core belief is that geometry, mathematical ratios, harmony, and proportion also exist in music, light, and cosmology. These are the invisible patterns that drive our physical world, just as spiritual traditions believe the soul drives the body. Organs were used as harmony bombs in free energy architecture temples to elevate humanity. Songs were tuned and played to a sacred healing pitch at 528 megahertz. It wasn't allowed to change the Earth's frequency, using, for example, a 440 megahertz frequency, which when divided by 12 equals 36.666, a frequency that causes disharmony for humanity and makes beings agitated, angry, and sick. This was not permitted. So at the correct frequency, there were regenerative concert halls where people recharged themselves with enjoyable music while the buildings collected etheric energy. Folks, they were living in a completely different world, a healthy, harmonious world, and the New World Order destroyed all of it. Amazing Tartarian architecture around the world, traces of a wiped-out civilization. Africa, Asia, and Australia. India and Turkey. South America. Mexico City. The Bodleian Library, founded in 1602 as the Library of Oxford University, is one of Europe's oldest libraries. It holds over 11 million items, including many of historical significance, 4 copies of the Magna Carta, a Gutenberg Bible, and a Shakespeare First Folio from 1623, to name just a few. The Vatican Library, under the ecclesiastical authority of the Catholic Church in Rome, is one of the oldest libraries in the world. Although formally founded in 1475, its existence in earlier forms dates back to the origins of the Catholic Church. The Vatican Library currently holds over 1.1 million books, 75,000 manuscripts, and over 8,500 rare prints. Morgan Library and Museum, New York, USA. Austrian National Library, Vienna, Austria. Weingarten Abbey Library, Ulm, Germany. Did these libraries contain Tartarian books? And what happened to those books? Were they hidden or destroyed? A very important question. The text indicates that water conducts electricity, in its claims that the character of Nikola Tesla was created to hide the fact that the Tartarians had mastered the use of the negative charge of the North Pole, the positive charge of the South Polar Circle, and ions in the ether, in addition to the salt water of the oceans, to be able to use free energy in oceans and seas. It's said that the salt in the water creates the electrolysis needed to conduct the alternating current any vessel needs to harness the Earth's magnetism. Thus, they had all the power, free energy, to light their boats, power electricity, and sail wherever and whenever they wanted. Can you imagine this genius? And can you imagine how the New World Order deprived us of this technology? This was a unique coastal railway in Brighton, England, operating across the shallow coastal waters of the English Channel between 1896 and 1901. Its aim was to extend the existing Volks electric railway, And because the eastern section of the coast ended at direct cliffs to the sea, Volk faced the costly and difficult task of building the railway on the cliff face. Volk's solution was to build the railway in the sea with an electrically powered carriage built on 4 legs, supported by crossbeams that kept the passenger section much higher than sea level, in addition to building a special boarding platform in Rotterdam. The railway itself consisted of 2 parallel tracks measuring 2 feet and 8.5 inches, which is 825 millimeters, and was described as measuring 18 feet, which is the gauge between the outer rails. The rails were laid on concrete sleepers fixed into the bedrock. The single carriage used on the railway was a pier-like building measuring 45 by 22 feet, which is 13.7 by 6.7 meters, standing on 4 23-foot-long legs. The carriage weighed 45 long tons and was powered by an electric motor. It was officially named Pioneer, but many called it Daddy Longlegs. This was way ahead of its time. And who built all this? Was this advanced Tartarian technology attributed to others?
The concept of aerial travel using flying machines was common in ancient India, and even in medieval and modern India, long before the modern aircraft invented by the Wright brothers. There's abundant literary evidence suggesting that people in ancient India were aware of the possibility of humans flying an aircraft to travel long distances or cross interstellar space. These aircraft used mechanical, spiritual, and tantric power to fly. In ancient Indian literature, there are detailed descriptions of flying machines that could transport people from one place to another or from one planet to another for wars, religious ceremonies, rescuing someone in distress, or accomplishing an adventurous task. Imagine amazing spaceships and flying machines mentioned in Indian mythology by gods, demons, and humans alike. The oldest epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, mention the use of Vimanas, or special aerial devices in ancient times. These are comparable in several aspects to the spaceships in Hollywood sci-fi movies like Star Trek and Star Wars. In the Ramayana, we have descriptions of a special aircraft called Pushpak Vimana. In Sanskrit, the language of communication in the Vedic period, the word Vimana means aircraft or flying machine. And it's no coincidence that the tall towers adorning Hindu temples are also called Vimanas. The word Vimana in this context has a much deeper spiritual meaning. Accordingly, Vimana is what differs from or deviates from normal mental consciousness. It is the higher consciousness directed towards the heavens, belonging to higher realms and indifferent to the mind and senses. It is from higher mental levels, from the gods where higher energies are subject to a higher purpose and a higher will. Did the Tartarians have the same knowledge, and was Vimana a common technology among ancient civilizations? The Mahabharata also mentions the use of flying chariots powered by lightning, capable of flying long distances in the solar system and beyond. There are descriptions of a demon king named Salva using a flying machine to attack Dwarka, the capital of Madura, and how Lord Krishna fought and destroyed the flying machine. In the Srimad Bhagavatam epic, 6th Canto Part 3, we find the following reference. Once, while King Chitraketu was traveling in outer space on a brightly shining airplane given to him by Lord Vishnu, he saw Lord Shiva. The arrows released by Lord Shiva appeared as fiery beams emanating from the sun globe and covered the 3 residential planes which could no longer be seen. All of this is evidence of highly advanced technology that was erased from official history books. They called themselves the Sonoma Aero Club, and over time they numbered around 60 members, perhaps many more. Among their members were great figures such as Peter Minas, the inventor of the club's secret levitating fluid, who was later described as a rough man with a good heart found in very few living beings, despite his addiction to strong drinks. The Aero Club rules were approximately once every 3 months,
Each member must stand before the group and deliver a thorough exercise of his jaw, describing how to build an airship. One night in 1858, a man named Gustave Feuer stood to present his invention, Aero Guarda, an airship surrounded by a type of hamster wheel cage that would protect its occupants upon landing. The majority of sightings occurred over 8 months between mid-November 1896 and the end of April 1897. There were hundreds of sightings, some with thousands of witnesses, according to newspaper reports. All attempts to verify the names of witnesses mentioned in newspaper reports revealed real people. Over 1,200 newspaper articles about the sightings were published in over 400 newspapers in 41 states and 6 Canadian provinces. The first widely reported sighting was over Sacramento on November 17th. The most prominent feature was a bright electric light. It wasn't clear if the light was attached to a structure, but some saw an egg-shaped craft with 4 downward-facing propellers. The San Francisco Call newspaper drew this image of the craft based on witness descriptions. The object flew over the city for half an hour and made multiple course changes, swinging from side to side and up and down like a boat facing a strong current. It was later mentioned that a similar light moved in the opposite direction the next night. The majority of newspapers dismissed the sightings, but a few took them seriously. Were these just ordinary human inventions, or remnants of the great Tartarian technology that existed before? And was it deliberately suppressed?
150 years ago, people were getting around in personal cars powered by compressed air, and they were riding public transportation that ran on compressed air. The document questions the source of this technology. It said that the ideas for air engines supposedly had been developing since 1687, where Denis Papin is claimed to have come up with the idea of using compressed air in the 17th century. In 1687, Papin revealed a new invention for pneumatic power transmission, aiming to develop a way to spread manufacturing to areas where water power was not available. This idea was strongly opposed at the Royal Society, and Papin left England to accept a chair in mathematics at Marburg University in Hesse, adjacent to Hanover. In 1690, Papin published a historic paper in Acta Eruditorum in Leipzig, titled A New Method for Obtaining Very Large Motive Forces at Little Cost, where he proposed using the force of expanding steam to power a piston cylinder engine. It said that a train running almost entirely on air, invented by W.E. Boyett of Atlanta, Georgia, could travel from coast to coast in 24 hours. It's claimed that air as fuel could reach speeds of up to 125 miles per hour on tracks, leading to lower transportation costs. After starting with batteries, the vehicle only needs air to keep running, making it close to perpetual motion. Inventor Boyett claims his invention is very simple, although it contradicts all principles of engineering. Are these real inventions that were covered up? And why is the New World Order trying to convince us that we are primitive?
Here's a big question. How did castles, cathedrals, and massive houses in cold European winters stay warm? A wood-burning fireplace couldn't possibly heat these huge palaces. Instead, it's claimed that they harnessed energy and could bring it directly into the entire building because it was electrified as desired and located, providing each room with independent heating using stoves and the building's electric current. There was a metal plate placed behind the firebox, or the entire firebox was made of metal, and objects resembling metal cups. These objects might have been of different sizes, with the larger ones usually placed near the edges of the fireplace. The function of the metal plates is quite clear. They reflect infrared rays when the fireplace heats up, just like a normal fireplace. The cups, on the other hand, have nothing to do with a regular combustion heating fireplace. These cups are nothing but ether capacitors, which amplify electricity in a conductor placed along it. It turns out these fireplaces weren't originally designed to burn wood. Their secret might lie elsewhere. It's envisioned that the fireplace and the ceiling were connected by metal links through the chimney. The entire structure becomes one solid conductor connected to the metal plate in the firebox. The ether capacitors placed near the fireplace cause eddy currents, Foucault currents, in the metal frame, which transfer them to the metal plate. Buildings with windows and cymatic openings with the help of organs, musical instruments, and singing produced a range of frequencies. These frequencies were then collected by devices designed within the architecture of all other buildings and converted into direct current energy. These frequencies were also transmitted underground through water and collected by piezoelectric transducers. This is the real internet. Piezo transducers generate electricity when exposed to a change in pressure. Water phones are used to listen to whales talking to each other. That's sonar. All life resonates and absorbs frequencies. The ether was full of frequencies that created harmony and resonated from the celestial dome. And it's said that what we call fireplaces could have been vents for emitted gases that were passed through buildings at that time. So, they were using free energy, providing heat, light, and communication, all with frequencies and the ether. And the New World Order hid this technology from us so we'd remain dependent on their multi-billion-dollar energy sources.
Before electricity became widespread and affordable enough for public use, gas was the most common method for outdoor and indoor lighting in cities and suburbs. Early gas lamps were lit manually, but many later designs were self-igniting. Baltimore was the first American city to use gas street lamps. Peale's Gaslight Company in Baltimore lit its first street lamp on February 7, 1817, on Market and Lemon Streets, now Baltimore and Holiday Streets. The thermolamp, using gas extracted from wood, was patented in 1799, while the German inventor Friedrich Windsor, or Frederick Albert Windsor, was the first to patent coal gas lighting in 1804. The first electric street lighting used arc lamps, initially the electric candle or Yablachkov candle, developed by the Russian Pavel Yablachkov in 1875. This was a carbon arc lamp using alternating current, ensuring both electrodes were consumed at equal rates. In 1876, the Los Angeles City Council ordered the installation of 4 arc lamps in different parts of the nascent city to light the streets. On May 30, 1878, the first electric streetlights were installed in Paris on Avenue de l'Opéra and Place de l'Étoile, around the Arc de Triomphe, to celebrate the opening of the Paris World's Fair. In 1881, coinciding with the Paris International Electrical Exhibition, streetlights were installed on major streets. The first streets in London to be lit by electric arc lamps were Holborn Viaduct and Thames Embankment in 1878. More than 4,000 lamps were in use by 1881, although Friedrich von Hefner-Alteneck of Siemens and Halske had developed an improved differential arc lamp by that time. The United States was quick to adopt arc lighting, and by 1890 over 130,000 lamps were operating in the U.S., usually installed on exceptionally tall moon towers. With the development of cheaper, more reliable, and brighter incandescent lamps at the end of the 19th century, arc lamps fell out of use for street lighting but remained in industrial use for longer. Thomas Edison began serious research into developing a practical incandescent lamp in 1878. Edison filed his first patent application for improvement in electric lights on October 14, 1878. After many experiments, first with carbon in the early 1880s and then with platinum and other metals, Edison eventually returned to a carbon filament. The first successful test was on October 22, 1879, and lasted 13.5 hours. Edison continued to improve this design, and by November 4, 1879, filed a U.S. patent application for an electric lamp using a carbon filament or strip, coiled and connected to platinum contact wires. Was all of this just a preliminary story for certain corporations to control electric power after the free energy technology of Tartaria was hidden?
As the story goes, the first trains were built in 1827, and between 1880 and 1890, over 70,300 miles of new lines were opened in that decade alone. The first steam-powered railways began in 1804. Transcontinental train travel in the U.S. wasn't completed until 1869. And as you'll read below, Sacramento, California had built its first railway lines in 1855. This means that the trains used in Sacramento had to be loaded onto ships, sailed around the southern tip of South America to San Francisco, California, and then shipped via the Sacramento River to be placed on the railway lines. The men and women who came by the thousands to California in search of gold after finding it at Sutter's Mill above Sacramento had to be used to dig railway lines, shape the metal, lay the tracks, and install the trains over the tracks with all the necessary knowledge and surveying to complete the railway lines? Does that sound plausible? All this without any advanced technology? Or was there a previous Tartarian rail network that was exploited and rebranded? Oregon, California, Washington, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Arizona Territory, New Mexico Territory, and Texas. The period from 1880 to 1890 was one of rapid expansion. Over 70,300 miles of new lines opened in that decade alone, raising the total network to 163,500 miles. Or every trade and calling on Earth. Desired by male, this was a revolution, and wards fired the first shot. To buy mouthpieces, gospel hymn books, hat pins, rifles, wagons, violins, bird cages, or portable bathtubs, purchases that previously required many separate trips to specialized merchants, suddenly all the American shopper had to do was affix a stamp. This unabridged catalog of the commercial giant from 1895 displays about 25,000 items, from necessities, flour, shirts, to products that have passed into obsolescence. Ear trumpets. It's an important resource for archaeologists, students of American heritage, historical novelists, and anyone who wants to know how much their great-grandfather paid for his suspenders. It's a true record of an era. All of this shows us that there was a very advanced civilization, the Muslim civilization of Tartaria, and the New World Order worked to erase any trace of it to write a new history that suited its goals. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of our story that'll make your head spin 360 degrees. A story that makes us seriously ask, is everything we've been told the whole truth? Or is there something much bigger we weren't supposed to know? Is there a real conspiracy that's been going on for years to wipe out the history of a great civilization like the Muslim Tartarian civilization and to hide advanced technology that existed long ago? My opinion is there's definitely something fishy going on, and the stories we're told about history sometimes contain far more secrets and mysteries than we imagine. Is what we know about history just a modified version, and was a great civilization like the Muslim Tartarian civilization intentionally erased from collective memory by the New World Order?
What do you all think? Are you convinced by this, or do you still have questions swirling in your mind? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss our next mind-blowing videos. See you in a new video, and peace out.